So I thought today we would really just go through and discuss the first chapter in The Art of Disappearing, the ideas that are in here. Um, and I went through and I underlined some things that I definitely wanted to touch on. I think I've told everyone, but I'll say it again just in case, that I brought this book with me into a 3-month retreat at Ajahn Brahm's. Well, I was at Jhana Grove. The nuns, the bhikkhunis that come on that retreat, there were two of us. Ayya Chanda, who's one of Ajahn Brahm's students, and is starting a bhikkhuni monastery, has been for a while in England and the UK. And she and I were sharing the nuns' cottage that Ajahn Brahm and the Buddhist Society of Western Australia have included there at Jhana Grove. I mean, and it's pretty amazing for any place to have a place for bhikkhunis, I gotta say. And it's a really wonderful feeling to be invited and allowed to be on retreat for 3 months, fully supported. So
What was this?
This was at Ajahn Brahm's, at the retreat center by Ajahn Brahm's monastery. So it's called Jhana Grove.
And is that in Australia?
Yes.
Thank you.
Perth, outside of Perth, Australia. And Bodhinyana Monastery, where the monks live, where Ajahn Brahm lives, is just, a 15-minute walk down the road. The property is contiguous. And the bhikkhunis would go to the monastery for our meal and for other things. And we had the full invitation to be there anytime to meditate in the Dhamma hall. And we were able to use the library and on those kinds of things. So I brought this book, The Art of Disappearing. I felt like, okay, I'm going to be right there with Ajahn Brahm. He gave private interviews every 2 weeks for each person on retreat there, and the monastics. And I also brought Stillness Flowing, which is the biography of Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Chah's teachings are included. And this was I had read it completely in about 1.5 times before that, and I read it completely during the 3 months, and it was so wonderful again. And I was reading it alongside The Art of Disappearing, and especially the chapter, The Heart of the Matter, which is mainly focused on meditation. I felt like I was seeing the two of them. I could really see how Ajahn Brahm was a student of Ajahn Chah, and how much commonality there was in the teachings, even though Ajahn Brahm has, all of the longtime disciples of Ajahn Chah, the monks, have their own styles. And, teachers teach from their strengths. And Ajahn Brahm is a natural deep meditator. I mean, he goes into jhana easily. And as someone told me now 20 years ago or more, yeah, Ajahn Brahm, he doesn't really explain exactly how to do it because it's so easy for him. He like doesn't know how to deal with the problems that most of us have, because not that he doesn't know, but he's, it's just different when it's something, you sit down, you close your eyes, you stop thinking, and you're in deep meditation. It's like, that's not really quite enough for me. It doesn't quite work that way. But anyway, so he talks about jhana a lot, and Ajahn Chah didn't really talk about it, naming it that way. And the other forest masters often don't either. And my sense is, and I think it's pretty apparent in some of what Ajahn Chah says, what we see in Stillness Flowing, and what some of the other disciples of Ajahn Chah say about it, is because oftentimes people pick up the framework of the jhanas, the description of those 4 levels, And it becomes a goal-oriented process. You want to get that. And that just destroys, and Ajahn Brahm says the same thing, that just destroys the softness, the relaxation, the letting go that really needs to be there in order to go deeper, have the peace and stillness that's really needed for deep meditation to happen. But Ajahn Brahm is also really trying his best to encourage us all. And so he's, continually trying to help people gain the confidence to go deeper in meditation. So I had a very rich 3-month retreat, and it was an opportunity to learn more about my mind and have the complete space to, like Ajahn Brahm's, like, sleep whenever you need to sleep, eat or not. If you don't show up for meals, it won't hurt you, for them. But, just really follow what your system needs. And, and it was great because I just don't have that chance. The last time I had a 3-month supported retreat, the only other time was 15 years earlier at Chithurst. And so this was a real gift.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean that because it was 3 months, or because the structure?
It was 3 months, and it was also, there wasn't anything intruding upon it.
It wasn't what?
Wasn't anything else intruding upon my flexibility of and the retreat itself. Like, I didn't have other duties. So when I had the 3-month retreat at Chithurst, I was an anagarika. I was in 8 precepts in white robes, and most of the time the anagarikas have to help out and do, you don't get very much time. And even in the context of that 3-month retreat, you only had like 2 weeks of private retreat. You're living in a cottage with other people. It's a very different experience. And so this was really special. It was really good. And so I want to just talk about a few of the, as we go through the the first chapter here. I have the points that I want to just bring up, and then I want to hear what people found for themselves, or if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, just what this brings up for you. And the first chapter is called The Big Picture. It really gives us a context, an orientation, kind of like this is how we have to, isn't the right word, but this is a way of putting in the causes and conditions for the mind to let go. And it comes directly from the suttas, really. So the first thing he's talking about is wherever we live, there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be difficulties. And most of us have been practicing long enough that we know how to hold that. We know how to relate to that. Not that there's something going wrong when, the computer doesn't talk to the printer, or, the car won't start, or, you just got fired, or, things come out of the blue. I've been gone for 4 days back to the Chicago areas in northwestern Indiana. My eldest cousin passed away, and I went back for the funeral, and I'm very glad I did. It was a very healing experience, I think, all around. And it wasn't a sudden death. And everybody was, even his daughter, who, of course, you're gonna miss your dad. But she was like, it was time. He was well ready to go. And, it's like, and then people will ask me, like, how did you get into this? None thing. I gotta tell you, Northwestern Indiana is not a hotbed of Buddhism, you know, so, and my family, you know, anyway, we won't go that too far down that road, I hope today, but, you know, but, you know, it was my father's sudden death that threw me onto the path in all earnestness. And so, you know, we can think, well, this is really horrible, or we can go, you know, this is how life is. Whether we're well prepared or not well prepared, we expect it or we don't expect it. If we're practicing, we're preparing for these eventualities. And, you know, we don't know how it's going to happen, but we know it's going to happen. So we're preparing. And Ajahn Brahm's encouragement here in this first section is really, you know, don't think something's gone wrong if there's illness, if there's, you know, things are breaking down, if there's death, if there's any other kind of discomfort or suffering, it's just normal. It's normal life. And, you know, if you've listened to him at all, you've probably heard him say, you know, if you get sick and you go to the doctor, don't say there's something wrong with me. Say, doctor, there's something right with me. I'm sick today. You know, it's a little corny, but I love dad jokes, and Ajahn Brahm's got many of them. And, you know, it's the truth. It's like, this is the best way to prepare for life. And, you know, then something comes along and it makes you frustrated or grumpy. And it's not like there's anything wrong with that either. It's just a reaction. And the encouragement is to turn towards it, be present with that experience, not getting down on ourselves, but, you know, looking, you know, it says here, even though let's see if even though we struggle as human beings to try to make life go smoothly for ourselves and others, nevertheless, it's impossible to ensure that happens. It's also impossible to ensure that we're not going to have some kind of reactions to it. And the idea is that we turn towards whatever it is. So, you know, we don't want to, you know, he says here on the first page, asking for the world to, you know, we don't want to ask the world for something it can't give us, like everything being smooth. It's not possible. That's suffering in and of itself. We want it to be different than it is. And we can look at, there's always going to be suffering in that. And when you dig a little bit deeper, it's related to what I think is me and mine. And there's always going to be suffering in that. So the encouragement is to really be present in the moment and to really turn towards it and understand that suffering. So, you know, he says here, it's not our job to ask for things that the world can't give us. It's just our job to observe. Understand, accept, and let it go. And he said, the more you fight with your body, your mind, your family, the world, the more collateral damage it causes and the more pain you experience. Yes, Elizabeth.
Listening to that is reminding me of what I was talking about earlier, the different levels of understanding and practice. To understand and accept and let go, you have to, first of all, that's not something you can do without some practice under your belt.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, the degree for myself, the degree to which I can let go is, it's like an equation. The more I trust the practice and the safety net of the Dhamma, the more I can let go. And that's just not there at the beginning. So this is an evolving So I'm thinking, like I said, the first time I read the book, nothing stuck with me at all.
Mhm.
And this time, every sentence was a jewel. And I thought, oh, that's more about, me than it is about what was said.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say that, you can't let go unless you're letting go, unless you have some comfort level and some security, something that you can depend on.
And part of what, and you're saying, that it's through the practice that we develop that security. And even if we just start by, okay, I'm just going to be present with this experience. If we just pause, even if we've, first become really upset that this thing has happened, and then we just pause and we turn towards that upset feeling, we turn towards that dukkha, then that's the first step. And then once we stay present with that and we can see how it changes and we can see how it dissolves, then we've already got more confidence, more security. So it really does build through each experience of being present with what we're experiencing.
I just want to put in the room because I've been through a very difficult situation. When I read this, and especially when he was saying, it's not my business, it's like, I'm in such a stressful situation, and I can't just say this is not my business. I'm trying to take care of somebody. I'm trying to deal with major transition. I'm losing my husband. And so I didn't find it helpful. And I felt like he was talking to monastics who already have a foundation from which they can really benefit from this. But for me, in the situation that I'm in right now, I didn't feel that this was really offering me anything. And I just want to put that in the room because I need to share it.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because it's so true. And the first thing that comes to my mind is knowing what is helping us in the moment and what isn't. So that's part of your practice. You already know, it's like, yeah, that just doesn't work for me right now. It works for other people in different stages, and it might work for you in a different time.
I hope it will.
I trust it will. But then I'm grateful that you also have a long-term practice. You've got a lot under your belt and you've got friends. And I hope they're coming to your aid. And if you ever want to call us. Because I think when we are in that kind of, and it's totally, let me totally acknowledge it. When I cared for my mom, and it's not even nearly what you're going through, because this is lasting months, years. I was getting to years, but it's like, it's a totally different thing. It's really hard. And it's like, what do you do? How much can we disengage from that from time to time? Well, maybe now that he's really got some care and you don't have to watch out for his safety 24/7, you might be able to have more time where you can pull away a little bit. It's not like you're going to emotionally, it's not like you're going to forget he's there. It's not like you're going to be able to just I'm not in this. It doesn't matter. It's not my job. I'm not saying that, but how much rest can you give to your mind? The first thing, as you were saying that, it's like in times like that, to look at what is going to be the nourishment for you, for your mind, for your health, for your body. That's where you have to look. And just recently, someone in our community provided a link to a little clip of Ajahn Suchart talking about food for the mind, or the requisites for the mind. And I really liked how he framed it. So I've mentioned it already in another talk, but this idea that, you have these requisites for the body: food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. And then what are the requisites for the mind? The food that you give the mind comes from charity, doing for others. Because that brings a good feeling. It gives the mind nourishment. And I know it's really hard in the situation you're in, but I'm wondering how much you can remind yourself that this is a gift you're giving.
Haven't been reminding myself, but when I look back and realize what a good job I've done, even though I didn't feel that way.
It's very important.
And people keep telling me
Yeah.
that what I'm doing is unusual.
Yes. Yes. You've been in 100%. You've been doing a really good job. And you need to hear that when people say it, and reminding yourself, this is a gift that you're giving. And so whenever we give, when giving of ourselves, you know, having that charity, we can even think about what we've done in the past to remember that this good feeling that automatically comes. It's a little harder to feel it and enjoy it when you're in a situation where there's so much coming at you. But if you can try at least to take a little time for that reflection and give the mind that nourishment.
And I'm also happy that I've had more time now, finally had a few hours every now and then to actually start doing more Dharma, getting more reconnected. So
Yeah.
I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Because the other things like the Ajahn Suchart was, and I think this is also maybe in the commentary somewhere, I'm not sure if it's in the suttas, but the part that you can think of as the clothing of the mind is virtue. It's like clothing protects us, protects the body. And so our virtue, our morality, and you can always look at, you know, that practice in your own life, recognizing that that is a protection that you have. And then the shelter is meditation. For the mind, that's what really protects the mind. That's the shelter for the mind. So hopefully now you'll have more time to meditate too. And the medicine for the mind is the Dhamma, it's wisdom. So you've got those. And I think that, you know, I don't know, it's just such a nice, tidy package. You know, it's like, these are the requisites for the mind. And when we're going through really whatever sort of stress, when the stress is so intense, like what you're experiencing, then kind of really like, this is what I have to give myself more of. These requisites keep us afloat. Yeah. Of course, it can't be like, well, I'm just going to disengage from this. It's like, but thank you so much because, yeah, it's like Elizabeth said, the first reading of this book on when it didn't hit home. This time it is. And I had not read it before, but, you know, it was the right time for me at that point. But then here we are together working on this. To see someone needs to be admitted to the room.
I got it.
Here we are together working on this, and what we want to do here is really work on what's happening for us, because that's how we're gonna make progress. So thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Or
Well, I think that phrase, it's, but what did you say? It's not your business. I think that's very advanced. I think for anybody to adapt that. I think Ajahn Brahm, of course, has. But that's my feeling. That's a long way to get to that. That's my personal feeling.
I think we have to try to find the examples where it is possible for us now. You know, like I don't know, heard about that book title a long time ago about, what other people think of me is none of my business. I like it. Didn't read the book, but I like the title. There might be places where you can say it's none of my business. And when he goes into, let's see, maybe somewhere in the next page. He's talking about suffering. I don't know where it happens in here, where he's talking about sound, like during the meditation retreat or something, you're hearing the noise of the birds or whatever. That's an easier way to practice. This is none of my business. Or sometimes what we watch on the news, I can't control it. I can't do anything about it. Or maybe I've already done what I can do. And then how can we like step away and let it fade?
Yeah,
this-
I think the preliminary for me to it's none of my business, I can't go right to that. But I can ask myself, is there how can I affect this? And if I can't, which is often the case, then it becomes not my business. I have to let it go because I can't do anything to affect that particular thing. So that's like a step I have to take before that's helpful for me before I can just say that's none of my business. I can't go right to it's none of my business always. But when I remind myself how useful, I'm getting all upset about something isn't important, not really. I mean, I know some situations are, but a lot aren't for me. And also, even if it is really important, can I make a difference in being upset or and often I can't with that either. So then I can go, well, then it's none of my business.
The other part of it is what Ajahn Brahm is talking about here, like he mentions, it's none of my business what's happening with the water system or what's happening with, some monastic. He deals with a lot of problems. He had 30 monks living there. And then he's got these two bhikkhunis, and a bunch of lay people. And lay people actually go there for the whole rains retreat. And, whenever you're dealing with people, you got trouble. Take this.
Oh, there's a famous quote, hell is other people's.
Yeah. There was another bhikkhuni who was talking with us last week or sometime, and she's like, yeah, I just am so glad you're willing to train people. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of trouble. Yeah, people are trouble. But he's also talking about, even though you don't, it's not like you're not going to deal with it. But when he goes into his cave, he doesn't take it with him. And I started thinking of the room I had as my cave. Now it was a 5-star cave because it had its own bathroom, a heater, air con, it's got everything you need. But if that's my cave and the only thing that comes into this is what I bring into it, then it starts to become my responsibility. Am I going to bring all of that stuff from the past? Am I going to bring anything that, is happening, like, wherever it's happening? Am I going to bring that in here with me? Or can I leave that at the door? Is there a place where I can go and leave that at the door? And then whatever comes in with us in our mind, something it's too sticky to put down. That's suffering. That's the dukkha. That's what we turn towards. That's what we come to understand. So what Ajahn Brahm is saying is like, the way to work with the dukkha, the suffering, is to understand it. How do I really understand it? Can I really understand where it comes from? I mean, sometimes it comes from unrealistic expectations. Like your partner says suddenly one day out of the blue, I don't want to be married anymore. This happened to me. And then it was like all this feeling, oh gosh, and being so surprised. And then it's like, I knew this relationship wasn't permanent, but I sure thought it was more permanent than this. You know, it's like, it's those expectations, you know, you don't even know you had. Uh-oh, you know, but then if you can look at it like that, if you can start to apply some wisdom to it, knowing that everything ends, knowing that everything changes, knowing that there's a bigger picture. I have to take in this bigger picture. The bigger picture that goes beyond this lifetime, the bigger picture that goes lifetimes long, the really big picture. Sometimes that's the one you have to go to in order to find some peace. It's never the end of the story.
I'm using the daily meditation. It's all about whether or not it's my business. Because when my meditation is my business, I'm like, well, maybe I should do this technique, or maybe I should be clarified down, or maybe, you know, the more I just say, you know, they tell me to do this is a meditation focus. Now can I let go of trying, you know, make it my business, just to be present with it, see what happens, observe what happens. So I think, you know, this practice thing with the little things,
Yeah.
you know, get moving towards the bigger thing so that it's no, there's
Mhm.
nothing, it's our business.
Mm-hmm.
We're there to observe it, but, you know, we have a little influence and almost no control.
You have a little influence and almost no control. Could you hear Stephen? No.
Oh, sorry.
So he was talking about sitting down in meditation, and then, you know, when he's feeling like that's his business, the mind is like, oh, should I be doing this technique or that technique or whatever? And then he says, okay, this is the technique I'm going to use, or this is what I've been guided to do. And then to be able to let go of all the rest, this is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of his way of like, none of that rest of that is my business. Can I really just set that all aside? And Ajahn Brahm, of course, gets into this in this same chapter of how this ability to say, that's not my business, or at least that's not my business right now. And then, you know, like let the meditation unfold on its own, because when we try to control it, it doesn't work. And so many times we see this a lot, you know, and we see it I see it in myself. I could see it in myself during retreat where I'm really trying to like, okay, I'm gonna really like strive, right? And then like noticing the mind getting more tight and knowing, yeah, I'm trying to control this. Okay. You have to put in the causes and conditions, but then you have to let go. It's a very interesting kind of almost paradox. So there's a chat, something in the chat here. I seem to have a reverse of that process happening, but I have a feeling there's something else going on in a way. Having old age, sickness, and death front and center at all times shifted my practice towards the more wholesome. And on some level, I had groundwork for it. Now, though, I feel there's too much pain and despair coming in. And I had made a commitment not to close off from the start and turn toward it, but at this point it's too painful. And I have surviving to do. The basic needs aren't met. And I'd be dishonest if I didn't say that the fact I'm far along on that same trajectory does not affect me. Not quite sure what to do with this. Okay. What do we do when the basic needs aren't being met? The requisites for life. And I know you're trying to reach out to all the possible sources. Sometimes when things are too painful, I don't know, we may just be better to talk about this offline because it's hard to know. And I'm only one of many, yeah. Yeah, this is a reference towards something that's happening in our society where people are really relegated to the margins where they become invisible. And what are we doing? What can we do? Where can you go after you've tried all the sources? And care, and there's another message about relating to this so much, because yeah. I don't think I have an answer that's actually going to meet the particular situation, but maybe we can talk about it offline. See if there's anything more that can be done. When we have this experience of the pain being too much and the lack of resources being so strong, sometimes if there's any place to rest, emotionally, even physically, if we can distract the mind from the problems for a little while, that's not bad. We can give the mind some rest so that it can come back stronger. And I think we have to talk about it more offline. Don't know. I don't have a good answer. But thank you for sharing that. Marianne.
So, I was just thinking that in regards to this whole point about it's none of your business or whatever, the way I see it is just because something is none of your business doesn't mean that you can't be present. Like I mean, but the practice I've been doing recently, it's completely different than this. This is, or in the first chapter, Ajahn Brahm was talking a lot about withdrawing the senses and entering into jhana. And for me, it's more about engaging with the senses and really noting really improving my awareness of sensations, which is a different sort of thing. But one thing I would notice sometimes when meditating, or even there have been times when I've been like just not meditating, but taking a walk or something, where I'll notice that I'm experiencing all these emotions, these thoughts, these sensations, but it feels more like a flow of phenomenon. And sometimes I can feel a clash of phenomenon, like my anger is arising because here's my opinion coming up, and here is this guy's opinion coming into my mind, and it's like a clash of our karmas or something that's together. But knowing that because it's more of like this flow, it doesn't feel as personal. It doesn't feel like it's my business, even though I'm intimately connected to it somehow. It's kind of hard to explain, but it does kind of take the edge off the knife a bit.
Yes.
To have that piece of knowing. So that's how I would, in regards to my practice now, that's how I would relate to that phrase.
Could you hear Ariane online? Could you hear Ariane? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, and I think this is where we're going. It's like, this isn't about becoming apathetic about life. This is about seeing the world the way it is. And as we go through the chapter, through this little section, what we're seeing is he's talking about nibbida. He's talking about, you see the way things are. You see that this is the natural way that samsara is, this is the way the world is, and then you lose interest in being so incredibly immersed in it. It's like you disengage because you become disillusioned. Another translation for nibbida is disenchantment. You're not enchanted anymore. Another translation is disgust. You become disgusted with the world. You know, it's like watching the news maybe, or like watching you know, some kind of ongoing story, and the story just keeps repeating itself. And it's like, it's not that it doesn't matter, it's just that you can see, like, this is how it is. It's not changing. It's not, it has its ups, its downs. It seems better, it seems worse, but it keeps going around. And then you say, you know, I don't have to be so caught up in this. I don't have to be so intensely affected by this. I can step back. So I had a big dose of nibbida and viraga, the sort of fading away of one's attachment and interest in this 3-month retreat, because I was bringing my mind to it. And everything, what I could see so clearly, and you might also know this, everything that we do and we think about, we put our attention on, shows up in our meditation. Our meditation is really a reflection of whatever we're doing. It's kind of like our dreams at night are a reflection of what's happening, even though it comes back in a different form. You can like see, okay, if you reflect a lot on the way things are, and this disenchantment, disillusion, disengagement, disgust starts to arise about life, about the world, then you're going to have some of that experience in meditation. But the truth, the reality about the process of meditation, you know, as you can see in some of the suttas where, you know, it starts with your moral virtue or your faith, and then you have non-regret, and you start to feel joy, the pamoja kind of joy, and you start to feel piti with a spiritual energy through the body, and you start to feel sukha, like a real pleasant feeling, and then some tranquility, some passaddhi, and you know, and all of this is building up to samadhi, and the mind becomes still. And as it goes deeper into that stillness, the mind is refreshed and healed, and even the body can be healed. I think he mentions that in this first chapter too. The healing that can come from demeditation. I know he talked about how, you know, sometimes the more we try to heal the body, or we get wrapped up in our illnesses, the less good it does. But when we let go of it a bit and we take that kind of rest for the mind, especially if the meditation can go pretty deep, sometimes it starts to dissolve or resolve on its own. But of course, not always. That's natural. But the point being that this is the natural result. The natural result of samadhi is seeing the way things are. And when we really see the way things are, it hits us deeply, then we naturally let go. We naturally disengage. Not in a negative way, but in a very natural, positive way. You're just not going to be as interested in the same story on the 150th play. And if we could remember our past life, you'd see that the viewing of it this time is way more than 150. But we're like still going, oh my gosh, this is, you know, and we don't need to be. But instead, we can solve problems and do what we can to make things better. And have more calm and collectedness and wisdom and be more of a resource to others, the more we are not attached. And so that nibbida happens, and then the viraga, which is the fading away. What's fading away? Well, in one way that Ajahn Brahm uses it as when you're going inside like that and everything's becoming still, then all of the world is fading away. None of the problems are with us in there. None of the, sense input, even the body disappears. When the body disappears, definitely in jhana. And another thing, like where, he talks a lot about jhana, but what if the mind doesn't want to go there? And we just use the same kind of like doing what works to help the mind settle and be still. And there's an amazing amount of healing and stability that comes from any amount of stillness in the mind. And Ajahn Chah said, and Ajahn Gunha also, if you're in that kind of level of samadhi where there's still thoughts, if it's not disturbing the mind, there's no problem. And it's like it's not absolutely necessary for awakening. I mean, this is a big controversial kind of question, but we can awaken without having to go into all the jhanas, without having to, certainly without having to develop psychic powers or a lot of the things that come from deep meditation. But it's really enough stillness of mind that we can see the truth. And then we feel differently. We relate differently to the world. So we've got some things in here in the chat. Take a look.
And I don't know if it's right to go into, but we can take a look.
I feel like I'm a disregarded person, invisible to most people in this culture as someone with a severe chronic illness living in poverty. It's another blow to me that I'm excluded financially from Western Buddhist centers. Yeah. I don't know how I can say there's nothing wrong with Buddhist teachings when
there is something wrong.
There is something wrong with Buddhist teachings are being commodified for wealthy people along with housing, food, and all the other requisites of life. Yeah, being a monastic, I'm like, oh gosh, it's got, the Dhamma can't be sold. It's not good. We need to have this be available for
And
people.
your voice is getting very low.
Uh-oh, I can bring it up. Did you hear all that?
No.
The Dhamma should not be sold.
Should not be.
Sold.
I
know, just a minute. Ajahn Punadhammo is a disciple of Ajahn Mahabua. He said to me, if a Dhamma teacher ever asks for money, run the other way. And of course, one of the things I appreciate about monastic life in the monasteries from the Ajahn Chah tradition and the other forest monasteries, they never charge anything. I know that's still not so helpful if you live in an area or the places you can get to are pretty expensive. Hopefully there's enough generosity and kindness to give scholarships. And I know that that's possible sometimes, but yeah, it's sad. But yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we have more hands over here.
Well, I was just gonna mention that, the retreat that the Aloka Vihara nuns and you do in May, that has now, that used to be a Dana retreat, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, they asked you for a certain amount of money for registration, but that part was doable. But now it is not Dana. They have it's no longer.
I didn't know that.
I know, it's a big.
I thought the monastic.
We didn't know it either until we looked online.
Uh-oh.
And the minimum is 5.
And the minimum is
Exactly.
high.
It's not,
Yeah.
yeah, so if you don't see the usual people there who follow
Oh.
this retreat, it's because of this policy that's happening.
I wonder if Ayya, Santussikā and Ayya Bodhi know about this. I'll
I
talk
don't
to
know.
them too. Cause I mean, I really appreciate when large meditation centers make a monastic retreat available for people where, you know, I can really understand having a kind of a commitment payment
Yeah,
that then
Yeah.
can be
Deposit.
refunded.
right.
A deposit that can be refunded. I appreciate that because people will sign up for things that are free and then they don't come.
Right.
And then somebody's out, you know, like
Right.
you can't fill the space. So
Yeah.
that's fair enough. But yeah, I'll look into it. Yeah. And it's high. Well, if you all are saying that,
Well, the minimum was $250. Probably high for a lot of people.
Say that again.
The
$250.
$250.
Did they change it?
For what?
If you, for the monastic retreat, it used to be $100, the last time I did it.
That's true.
But it's all the way down at the bottom of the list. What in how many days?
So this is for the May one that we were referring to.
The May one.
So it is 250?
Yes.
at the lowest, that's not what you,
How long is
That is the registration fee. In order to
yeah.
get in the retreat and be, hold your place, you pay $250.
Right.
I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's kind of doable. But then they're saying, now they're saying the retreat itself, bottom line, you have to pay $750. It is not a Donna retreat.
Really?
okay,
And now that's a whole other level.
yeah.
Because when you put down the 250, then you had the choice, well, I can't do more or I can do more and I can do a lot more. But now they're saying, no, you're doing 750 regardless of
Mm.
your that's the minimum. And then they also tell you what it really costs, that whole thing. But 750 is a big leap for 5 days.
Well, maybe Elizabeth, we need to look into that.
I mean, we read it over and over again.
Yeah,
because-
but Carrie is reading it as such.
Well, I was just assuming that, that's the minimum for people who can't afford it.
Okay,
That's what I.
all right, thank you.
Yeah,
But it-
I'm just gonna guess here. I once went to an online sort of discussion where a lot of spiritual teachers were talking about their decisions to either charge or not charge. And one thing that a lot of the teachers said that initiated their decision to start charging or having a floor rate was that people were taking advantage of, like, if they had a free scholarship option, like if they had an option, like if you can't afford it, you don't have to pay. It was pretty obvious to them that a lot of people who could afford to pay were doing that option, and they felt really bothered by that. So I
Was that for online teachings
No,
or
this is
for
for
in-person retreats?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
like, so I don't know if that ever features into decision making, but
I mean, a couple of the retreat centers that we teach at that are smaller charge for the accommodations, but it seems fairly reasonable.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's no, I mean, Insight Insight Retreat Center, IRC, Gil Fronsdale's
Yeah.
organization, they still do it on a Donna basis.
Yeah,
And that was a decision by the whole community, that the community members fill all the jobs and they really
Yeah.
put a lot of work into that. But that's their decision to give Donna.
Yeah.
It's really pretty special. Anyway, yeah, I will just check in on that and
Yeah.
see.
yeah, and we need to check it.
Checking it out.
So, okay, so here's a good example. What do we do with this? What do we do with this for our meditation? What do we do with this to help each other? We can create our own fund, right? That people can draw upon. Or something, maybe. but it's like, whatever, the point being, we hold on to way too much with regard to the world. And there are some situations that are really hard, and we can, do everything we can to step up and step into it and help. But still, when we sit down to meditate, we have to put it down. Or we just get completely obsessed. And I mean, whoever you read or look at or look up to who's developed on the path, they've all dealt with a lot of problems, their own personal problems. And then if they're teaching, like everybody else's problems. We've heard a lot of stories of things that happen in monasteries that maybe you never hear about, but it can get really intense. And at the same time, every meditator has got to be able to go into their cave, whatever that looks like, and put it down. So, this is really the encouragement so that we can really practice. And that's where our, at least one part of where our resourcing really comes from, so that we can provide support. So I think maybe this is a good time for us to meditate. So of course, the usual directions, usual instructions for meditation, sitting, if you're on a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your spine straight, if you're on the floor, making your body straight and your legs comfortable and your hands and arms comfortable, closing your eyes. Putting your attention on your breathing, perhaps, maybe not even that first, but scanning through the body, letting go of any tension you might feel. And start at the top of the head. Relax the eyes, the jaw, the shoulders, the muscles in your back, the belly, the legs. If we still feel tension, then we can go through the body again, maybe again. Putting attention on the breath, but gently, kindly, without force. Sometimes that's even too much control and gonna wait one way. Ajahn Brahm talks about it sometimes, or Ajahn Brahmali is waiting for the breath to come to you when it's ready. And letting the mind settle. Noticing the thoughts that are still coming through the mind. As a kind suggestion to set them aside, have a good effect. Sometimes, even if the mind really doesn't stop, you still might feel the positive results later when you get up from meditation. Sometimes it's helpful to bring another element into the meditation. That's more, keeps the mind more engaged, like a mantra. Or the cultivation of loving kindness. Begin to know our own mind, or have the freshness, the curiosity to see, what does this mind need right now, today, in this moment. We can really notice that that part that watches the mind, that watches the breath, that part is not caught up in whatever emotion might be there, whatever stream of thoughts might be there. Thai forest masters might call that the knowing, the part that sees the state of the mind, using mindfulness, the wonderful tool that brings sharpness and clarity to the mind, brightness. as we sit for a few more minutes, maybe give there an opportunity to reflect on disengaging. And we can't make ourselves let go, but we can consider what our suffering, what our particular experience of dukkha is now. And how much do we understand it? Do we understand it enough that we want to just take our hands off? In the present moment. If we really understand it enough, then letting go is automatic. The disenchantment, the disengagement comes naturally. And it's not a aversion or disgust in the way of not, of pushing it away, but really just seeing the endlessness of it, the not selfness of it. Whether it's something happening to the body or something happening in the world, something happening to people that we're connected with. It's still not self. It's not me, it's not mine. And it's like this. And can we be in that balanced space of not leaning towards it, not leaning back from it? It's just the way it is, and we can observe it and see it for what it is. Even if it's something we can't avoid or something that we have responsibility for, we can still let go of the attachment to it that causes the suffering. This is nibbida and viraga. Not pushing away, not drawing towards us. Just letting it be. Letting the mind come to rest. Yes, Allison.
I realized with my practice that, and there are a lot of things in this book that I agree with that were very good, but his wording to me felt abrupt and harsh.
Mm,
So I realized I do a lot of the things that one was talking about, but I use different wording. And maybe we need to find our own way of expressing what we need that helps bring us where we need to be. So for me, I'm often dragged to the past or the future. And in the past, I feel myself, just a thought, it just goes. But if it starts spiraling down, I go, this is the past, it's in the past, and it's over and done, and it has no hold over me. That's important. It doesn't bring it into the present. And if I'm spiraling out of control in the future, I go, is the future, it's unknown. And that helps. But these are just phrases that help me. Something else might be helpful for you that you come up yourself. And then, usually this will stop for me. And like I said, what I use the old kind of trite thing, the present is the gift. And this is where I want to be. And I just sort of, I'm able to just go there now, just be there. And it just kind of drops away and I settle. And if that doesn't do it, then I say to myself, fill the heart with love. When the heart is filled with love, there is no room for fear or anger, just love. And that usually does it. And it makes me feel happy and more settled. So that's what I did just now. And that works for me. But I think everybody is different. I just want to encourage people. I think there's a lot of value in the book. Just some of the examples he gave, some of the metaphors, I just didn't feel connected to. But I think I agree with a lot of what he has to say, just not having.
Yeah, and maybe as we go forward, so first of all, I want to thank you for sharing that. And it's like, this is true of any Dhamma teaching, we have to like, does that resonate for me? And if not, how can I take the principle and see how that shows up in my experience, what the encouragement is that the mind needs, how to say those things to myself. So I appreciate that. And maybe as we go forward and we get more into meditation, and I don't know if you've looked at the chapter in Stillness Flowing, if that's like closer to some of the kind of tone that works better. So I have a feeling you might not have been able to hear that online. I'm not sure, but wearing masks and not being so close to the microphone. Oh, you could hear. Okay, good. Could hear.
Great. I don't have to say it again. I'm very nervous to say it.
Oh, well, I really appreciate everyone sharing. I feel like when we talk about these things, we all learn from it, and we all are able to maybe go a little bit deeper and maybe feel a little bit more welcome to talk about what we're experiencing. And then, like the more we reflect on things and really take it in and look at, what is it that really supports my mind, my experience at this point in time, trying to let go of whatever we think we're supposed to be and really just be with what is happening, the better. I know you reminded me of something that happened in the 3 months. I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember it exactly, but when I got these like 2-word phrases for like the past. Because I have a lot of that coming up from the past, thinking about, like things I felt like I wasn't as skillful as I would have liked to have been or whatever. And then I started to reflect like, those situations, a lot of the people that were involved in those situations are dead by now. Like, they're not caring about this. And I'll bet you the ones that are still alive aren't caring about it either. You know? And finally it was like, when something would come up from the past, I'd go, so what? You know, who oh no, this one was, who cares? Like, who cares? Who cares that I said that stupid thing 35 years ago? You know, who cares?
Plus what I said,
And then, what?
I made myself so important.
I know,
Somebody else probably didn't even remember.
I know.
You know,
Ajahn Brahm says that too, you know, he's like, at some point, you know, when you think about like, what did they think of me or whatever, you know, finally, when you get to a certain age, you realize no one was thinking of me anyway.
Father told him when he said, you know, they think a lot less about you than you think they do.
They think a lot less about you than you think they do. Yeah, exactly. And then I think it was when it came to the future, my little phrase that just formed itself was, who knows? Is exactly what you said, like, who knows? I had these, I'll have to go back and look at my notes because I had these little things that just kind of rose in my mind. I did keep a journal. It's helpful sometimes to go back and look and get little reminders to help us. Yes, Marianne.
So, I have a question. Like I was saying before, my practice right now is more of a sensory engagement, like being aware of the senses. Is that something that you would, that's like sort of totally orthogonal practice to the more sensory withdrawal entering jhana thing? Or is it something where that skill eventually can sort of be helpful when it comes to a more deep, you know, entering jhana thing?
I think it depends on how you use it. So for me, first of all, how do we evaluate whether our technique that we're using is working or not? And we can look at the results. Is my mind more peaceful? Are my reactions more wholesome? You know, like, what's changing in my meditation and what's changing in my life? Basically, those are the two areas where we see the benefits of meditation. Is my mind becoming more peaceful, more wholesome? Is my life becoming more peaceful, more wholesome? Maybe that's a way to think of it. Noticing the sensory input, what are you doing with that? Is it sharpening your mindfulness? Do you feel like you're able to be more present, more mindful? You're able to kind of be present with the sensory input without being absorbed in it or engaged in it, like without taking it seriously. Like if it's something you like, something you don't like, maybe you notice that, maybe you notice how much it doesn't matter or whatever. But I think the point I'm making is there's the sharpening of your mindfulness that's possible through that practice. There's the development of your wisdom that's possible through that practice because you can observe the, you know, like the sort of famous story of Ajahn Chah finding that, you know, he's disturbing the sound, not the sound disturbing him. You know, like if it's something you don't like, how do you relate to it? And does, you know, like, so wisdom can develop. And you also, well, and the mind also will benefit from deeper meditation where something else takes over. That's the way I think of it. And when Ajahn Brahm's talking about, you know, you get to a point, and the way, I don't know if he says this, but he might, but from my own experience and other teachers talk about this, you get to a point where in the meditation, your body is completely trained. Your mind is peaceful. All the hindrances are gone. You can check each one. They're not there. You don't want anything. You don't want to get rid of anything. There's no restlessness. There's no sleepiness. You're really present. Your mind is keenly aware, but there's peace. And something else takes over. The whole thing starts to unfold on its own. And that's going to carry you into deeper states of meditation. So, it's like we don't want to stick with a technique that keeps us on the surface forever. Use it, see if it's valuable, and then also allow your mind to go deeper sometimes.
It sounds like the bottom line is the hindrances. Seeing how this reduces or enhances the hindrances.
Right.
Anything that reduces the hindrances is probably eventually going to be helpful for.
It's very important to know how to work with the hindrances, because we can't really get very far if the hindrances are still there.
Yeah.
We want to get to the place where that's not there. And there's lots of suttas that refer to that, importance of that. And then for the mind to really become flexible enough, malleable enough, available enough, peaceful enough to really be available for wisdom, be available for awakening, happy enough, joyful enough to be available for awakening.
Yeah, the joy thing was actually my initial reason for doing this, because I noticed I just get so bored while meditating. Like it's not fun.
Yes.
It's a fun thing. And so with bringing in sort of more senses, and also been doing some things to integrate that with my regular life, it's made my life just seem more interesting. And so I feel like I don't feel, or at least that's in baby steps.
Mhm.
Going into this direction of like, I don't have to, I feel less bored.
Yes. It's important to not be bored, or be able to be present with boredom in a way that you're not really bored anymore. Right.
Yeah.
And so being present with boredom changes the game. Right.
Self-aware boredom.
Yeah. But also what changes the game is developing piti and sukha. So like Ajahn Brahm is like, well, then you're just in bliss and happy. Well, that's easy for you to say, but it's like, what does it do? How does it work for us, for each of us? Like how do we encourage the mind in a way that then it comes to that happiness, and it's really so beautiful. And he talks a lot later on in the book about nimittas, and he told me that I should tell people about the experiences I had with nimittas, about the beauty of it, and the incredible colors and all of that. But it's not to use that as a distraction or as a way to keep the mind, occupied. It's like, how do I bring enough joy and happiness to the mind that it's not bored, it's present, it's alive, it's peaceful. Yeah. So this is your assignment, and I want you to tell us how to make the meditation joyful, happy. You can give us your ideas next time. Yeah.
There's a section in the book where he talks about the six senses,
Mhm.
and he refers to it as moving. The six senses are dependent upon moving.
Yes, he does. And how you have to have something to compare to. And then if it's not moving, the mind can't compare it, because it's the movement that causes your ability to like even notice that it's there. And if it goes still, it fades away. So that's another way that you might work with that sense input. See, like if you just are still with what's happening, or it's still, then see if it fades away. Like coming it to the point where you can't hear the sound anymore.
Yeah, that's something I toy with the movement in awareness of the senses, like how fast it is, and focusing on that, on the speed of it, and not clinging to like one sensation, but making sure like there's like I used to call it the bounce. And awareness, yeah, and it's an interesting thing. I hadn't thought of that angle about how like it eventually if there's no movement, like, or if you.
Yeah, do you want me to read that part?
Yeah. What chapter?
It's right
in the same first
chapter.
section.
It's about stillness. And he says, the mind is motionless and cannot connect with the body or with past and future. It's motionless in time and motionless in space. And that stillness allows everything to fade away and disappear.
Yeah, exactly. No time, no space. It's John.
It's under stillness in the first chapter.
You experience that in steps.
Yes,
As the mind quiet.
you're getting there. I mean, yeah.
I see more space between them. I know that's what's in my face.
Yeah, that's definitely after the hindrances have been calmed.
Well, that came to my attention. I was not perceiving things that way. But when he talks about it this way, it definitely gives me a chance to take a look at things this way.
Yeah, that paragraph starts with disengaging. So when when I go inside my cave, I've got nothing to do. I'm not my body, not my past or future. I just sit there and allow everything to fade, vanish, and go. Disengaging like that, experiencing nibbida, which is the disenchantment or disengagement, leads to viraga, which is the fading of connection. And that in turn leads to upasama. Yeah, stillness, calm, peace. It's a beautiful thing to know the true peace of the mind where the whole world outside vanishes and you're absolutely still. And then it's the part Olive read, the mind is motionless and cannot connect with the body or with the past or future, etc. Yeah.
Like that, it gets down. You lose insight because you're not aware of object.
You don't do anything. You can't do anything.
But this wouldn't be something you're doing right.
What?
You wouldn't be walking around doing.
No, no. I mean, I've heard that sometimes people can be in jhana and walk around. That's not.
So what Ariana was talking about, because you're doing it and you're like, you're not in jhana state.
But you're meditating. But first of all, I want to really make sure we don't get hung up on calling it jhana or not, because that may lead some people to be thinking in a certain way that gets maybe a little constricted. But you'll see the same thing in Ajahn Chah's descriptions of what happens when the mind becomes very peaceful, solid, and so yes, you're sitting and meditating. It's not, and people can have stillness of mind, samadhi, while they're doing walking meditation too. And the Buddha said if you do that, then it's going to last a long time, because you can do that while you're in motion. But he's talking about sitting. Yeah. Yeah.
But then it is possible to have though a stillness
A kind of samadhi, yeah.
with the
Yes, it is. Ajahn Gunha said that the first level of samadhi that, like Ajahn Chah talks about these 3 levels that you see in probably in the Visuddhimagga, I think, and it's in the chapter. And Ajahn Gunha said he walks around with that first one all the time. Like a certain kind of stillness. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but sometimes I have, where I've even just like yesterday, day before, it's like there's a kind of calm of the mind. It's almost like you've got that kind of feeling of insulation around you. It's very, very calm. You're observing everything, but there's that stillness in the mind, and there's mindfulness always there, always throughout the whole jhana. It's not about the reflecting on Dhamma comes if you're going into that deep state sitting. It comes after. Yeah. And one of the people on our pilgrimage was asking Ajahn Anan about this, like when you have a deep state like that, and then there's Dhamma, some Dhamma comes up and you're reflecting on it. And then what do you do? And then he said, then you go back into the deep samadhi again until the mind comes out on its own and is reflecting on Dhamma. And then you go back into the samadhi again, go deeper again, and then it will come back out and reflect on the Dhamma. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I love about the Buddhist teachings, and I am going to stop, it's 3 minutes after 5, but one of the things I love about the Buddhist teaching is that there's so much we can do. There's so much available, tools, ways to approach things, ways to think of things, and it's all consistent. It leads to the same results. It leads, it shores up or encourages or helps form the basic components that are needed all the time, like virtue, generosity, kindness, the Brahmaviharas. All of those virtues and paramitas develop in us, in our character, as we use any of these tools in the proper way. And that we never have to be bored. We never have to be at a loss for how do I inspire the mind, or how do I encourage the mind, or how do I apply these teachings in a situation that I'm in? Because there's always a way to do it. He gave so many different wonderful instructions. And it's not like, before I found the Dhamma, I think, 7 years of kind of like, oh, you sit down and you watch your breath, and you're kind of like, okay, now what? But there's so much more than that. So anyway, thank you all for coming and participating.